The Nintendo Switch may be getting an upgrade later this year with a 7-inch OLED display, and maybe even 4K. Let's talk about it. Okay, so the Nintendo Switch came out 4 years ago in 2017. That's a pretty long time ago, but the Nintendo Switch remains an incredibly hot-selling item, despite the fact that the Sony PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are on the market with next-gen features. There was a new Nintendo Switch, obviously, 2 years ago in 2019, but it was the Switch Lite, which was a less expensive version of the Switch. This new model, which was reported by Bloomberg, looks like something like a feature-packed upgrade to the existing TV dockable Switch. The two features that are mentioned are a 7-inch Samsung OLED display that would still be 720p, and possibly the ability for this thing to play 4K games when docked. So let's go to the display first. The 6.2-inch display that's on the existing Nintendo Switch, the larger one, is not great. It's fine. And Nintendo's games are not really super high res in the sense that the cartoony vibe looks perfectly fine in 720p for a lot of the games like Mario Kart or Splatoon or Animal Crossing. The thing I like is that this would be potentially more vivid, an OLED display having maybe brighter colors or black levels, and hopefully better battery life. Now, the Switch did get an update to its battery life a couple of years ago that boosted its battery into the 4 to 9 hour range. I find that it's pretty capable, but still I'd like to be able to see what I'm playing in a slightly larger screen size. 7 inches is not that much larger. The 6.2-inch Switch that's already out there feels like a display that's a little bit of a tweener. It's bigger than a smartphone, but it's not really the size of a tablet. 7-inch wouldn't really feel all that much tablet-sized, and it probably wouldn't change the way that developers design games for it, especially if it's still 720p. However, the 4K element is interesting. If there's a new dock that allows 4K gaming when connected to a TV, you could see a generation of games with all sorts of big graphics boosts. That would also require a new Switch processor, which feels overdue anyhow. But if that happens, how are those 4K games going to feel on a 720p Switch? I have no idea. It also doesn't sound like all of that is really that radical a change. And that shouldn't surprise you if you've had any sort of Nintendo hardware like a 3DS or DS in the past. Nintendo's handhelds have had all sorts of evolutionary improvements over time. The releases of new handhelds by Nintendo are usually every couple of years. And if you look at 2017 when the original Switch came out, 2019 when the Switch Lite came out, we're in 2021, so this seems like the time to do it. And maybe Nintendo doesn't change the equation because the Switch is already one of their hottest game consoles that they've ever had. But maybe those new improvements could also point to some other areas that you could tweak this system. The name Switch Pro is floating around a lot, which suggests that maybe it's an uptick, extra price device while the original Switch hangs around. But if that's the case, one thing I really want to see changed are the Joy-Con controllers. The Joy-Con controllers are a little creaky to me. They're pretty marvelous little versatile pieces of tech, but there are a lot of reports of Joy-Con drift and the buttons breaking down over time, and they don't feel as precision as other high-end game console controllers that I use. Also, it's lacking things like a real D-pad on the original Switch and an analog trigger. Those little clicky triggers on the sides really lose out on a lot of nuance from other games. Maybe Nintendo provides that. Maybe Nintendo makes those Joy-Cons more durable. Maybe they improve the haptics and the vibration to provide even more realistic feedback, kind of like what Sony did with the DualSense on the PlayStation 5. That would be really cool. If you just get the display upgrade and the 4K capability, that could be pretty cool too. If this is reaching out to people who don't already have a Switch, maybe that's the replacement to that model. But if it's an incentive to upgrade to a totally new model, it doesn't sound all that crazy exciting unless they also begin to shave down the design a bit. The original Switch is pretty large, and there's a lot of bezel space around the display. If they shrink that down, maybe they could get a larger screen on a new Switch and also make it more compact. which would be something to be easier to carry around. And maybe they can do something about that fan, which on the Switch that I have has been getting really rattly lately. The Switch Lite is a lot quieter when it runs, and maybe that can be the model. So there's not a lot that we know about the new Switch, but it sounds like it may not be coming out until later this year. So if you already have a Nintendo Switch, don't worry about it. And odds are when it comes out, your original Switch is going to be just fine. But we'll see what else happens in an otherwise kind of quiet year so far for Nintendo gaming news. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.